let's talk about what it's really like living in Brookhaven, Georgia. One of the first things you really need to understand about living here is where exactly Brookhaven is. Is Brookhaven a neighborhood of Atlanta? Is it a city? Is it a suburb? Brookhaven is its own city. It is a suburb, you could say, of Atlanta. But very often when we talk about suburbs of Atlanta, we're talking about cities that are outside of 285. And we here in Atlanta very often use 285 as a distinction between the more urban parts of Metro Atlanta and the more suburban parts of Metro Atlanta. So we often refer to 285 as the perimeter because it goes around the city of Atlanta. It's used as a bypass to get around the city, especially for people who are using interstates 75 and 85. And so these suburbs that are outside of 285, they tend to be a bit less city-like, a bit less urban. And so you have more car-dependent, more suburban feeling kind of neighborhoods and cities. Brookhaven, however, is its own city, and it is outside of the city of Atlanta, but it is within the perimeter. And so people who are looking for that kind of suburban feel, but they don't necessarily want to be an hour away from Atlanta, they choose Brookhaven because of its proximity to Atlanta, but it's still separated from Atlanta. Not only is Brookhaven its own city, but it's in DeKalb County, and so it's not even in the same county as Atlanta, even though they border each other. This is significant because residents of Brookhaven aren't getting Fulton County schools, they're getting DeKalb County schools, or specifically Brookhaven schools, which may be a little better than some of the Atlanta Fulton County schools. They're also not paying Fulton County property taxes, they're paying DeKalb County property taxes, which may be better or worse, actually, depending on the situation. For senior citizens, it may be different. Homestead exemption, these kinds of discounts would be applied differently for property taxes in DeKalb County than they would in Fulton County. And so there are a whole list of reasons why some people would not necessarily want to be in Atlanta or Fulton County, but they still want that inside the perimeter urban feel. You still have a lot of walkable areas in Brookhaven. You don't necessarily have to be car dependent in this city. And so this is a big draw for many people, especially people who are looking for that easy walkability in their new city that they're living in. What's up, y'all? My name is Victor with Atlanta Suburban Living. We put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the suburbs of Atlanta. Another thing to understand about Brookhaven, to really get the feel for what it's like living here, is who lives in Brookhaven, the demographics of Brookhaven. I'd say for the most part, this is a racially diverse area, and you have a lot of young families who are living in Brookhaven. Again, they're looking for the schools that are a little better than Atlanta. You also have young professionals who want to be close to Atlanta, and maybe a few retirees who live in Brookhaven. So you really do have a mix. As you would with any urban kind of city environment, you have a very wide range of demographics, and this is obviously something that's very important to many people. Certainly something that's important to my wife and I, to be in an area where we are not necessarily surrounded by like one way of thinking. And so Brookhaven has this kind of diversity in the people, and also this kind of diversity in the thinking. When it comes to politics, man, I don't really like talking about politics too much on this channel, but Brookhaven is very mixed. It's very purple. It's not necessarily red or blue. It is very mixed. And so this is a big part of living in Brookhaven. Something that you might wonder is like, where would you work if you lived in Brookhaven? Where would be where like the people typically go to work when they live here in this area? And so if you plan on moving to Brookhaven Brookhaven, or you just have any questions about what it's like to live here, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. I'm a local realtor. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. I'm always happy to help, even if you just have a question about what it's like to live here. So very often people who live in Brookhaven, they would commonly work in Brookhaven. There's a lot of industry, a lot of economy and employers in this area. And then again, Brookhaven borders Atlanta, and so it's a pretty quick drive to like Midtown Atlanta or downtown or Buckhead, especially because Brookhaven is northeast of Atlanta, and so to get to Brookhaven would be a pretty quick drive. And so very often people would work in these parts of Atlanta, and you're talking about maybe a 15-minute commute, maybe 20 minutes commute from Brookhaven to these parts of Atlanta. So much easier drive, a much easier commute than if you lived in one of these farther out, more quiet suburbs of Atlanta. And this is certainly one of the biggest draws for the people who live in Brookhaven. They don't want to deal with an hour commute to get to work. They are looking for that much quicker commute. When it comes to shopping and restaurants, there is no end of these things in Brookhaven. Again, you have that city feel, that city vibe, and so there are lots of places for shopping and restaurants and grocery stores, and these are all very easy to access in Brookhaven. And if you really want something that you can't for some reason find in Brookhaven, again, it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from Atlanta. Do people still say that? Hop, skip, and a jump? I don't I don't even know. But it's a quick drive to Buckhead. It's a quick drive to Midtown, you know, for maybe like a specific a restaurant or specific shopping or some kind of specific experience that you're looking for. Very easy drive to Midtown, not a hop, skip, and a jump. Another thing about living in this city is that there are lots of green space, lots of parks in Brookhaven. And so this is not like a city vibe kind of feel where you are surrounded by a concrete jungle. And this is another big part of why so many people choose the area or the city of Brookhaven. You know, if you lived in certain parts of Midtown or downtown Atlanta, not so easy to find those kinds of parks and green space, but Brookhaven has plenty of those parks and green space that people are looking for. In fact, there is Brookhaven Park in Brookhaven, and so this is another big attraction for many people, especially for families who are looking for those kinds of parks. There's plenty of that in the city of Brookhaven. Now, something to note is very important about living in this area is that the cost of living is a bit higher here in this part of Metro Atlanta than other suburbs. While you do have the easier commute to Atlanta, and you have some of the best shopping and restaurants, and you have some of the nicest homes here in Brookhaven, this also means that the cost of living is a bit higher. And so if you are looking for one of these lower cost of living, more affordable parts of Metro Atlanta, Brookhaven is not really a good city for that. But if you do prioritize these nicer shops and restaurants and homes and proximity to work and all of these things, then absolutely Brookhaven is a great option. Without a doubt, there are some downsides, however, to living in Brookhaven. Of course, any city is going to have its good and its bad, and if you plan on moving to a whole new state or new city, it's important that you really have the big picture, that you understand the good and the bad. And we don't want to just gloss over the bad sides. We don't want you to think that, oh, this area is amazing. Every city is going to have its pros and cons, so we made an entire video outlining the pros and the cons of living in Brookhaven. You can check it out right here. I'll see you in the next one.